Hi, I'm Anne, and today I'll be putting together the baby quilt. If you haven't been here before, there is a video for each one of these 12 blocks, and in the description below, you will find instructions for putting together the baby quilt. So I went ahead and cut up all of my sashings and cornerstones early on, and I started sewing them onto two of the edges. And the reason I didn't sew them all the way around is because at this point I wanted to be able to rearrange them. So I was stepping back and taking a look at it, and something really popped out at me. And that is, in this log cabin block, the center square is exactly the same as the cornerstones, and that will bug me forever. So I happen to have a whole bunch of extra blocks from filming, and this is the one I'm going to replace it with. And so what I do need to do is I'll need to add a cornerstone and two sashings to this block. So let's do that first. With that dealt with, now I'm going to rearrange these in a way that I feel is balanced. Okay, I'm happy with it. So to finish up this top, I need to finish putting my sashing on. Then I need to sew up 7 units that are a sashing and a cornerstone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I will finish cutting and I'm going to sit down and sew together those units. Okay, on this block I need to add a second cornerstone to the sashing for this corner one. So do that. Okay. Okay, now to sew together the blocks. I did one step before this. I took all of the blocks to the cutting table and I measured them all and trimmed where needed. And I also like to poke pins wherever a block falls short of the measurement it's supposed to be, so that in this step here, I can try to compensate for that. And so what we'll do is we'll sew column 2 blocks to column 1 blocks. So I'm going to gather all these, and then one at a time sew them together. Then I'll grab column 3 blocks in order and I'll sew those to the left units to finish that part up. And then we'll sew the rows together, and that's where nesting will come in really handy. So if you were consistent about pressing away from your block and toward the sashing next to the cornerstones, then from one row to the next, your seams will nest. And that makes it so we don't necessarily have to go to the iron until the blocks are all sewn together. Okay, so let's gather these up in order. Okay, so I've got my left column from the top row to the bottom row, and my center column from the top row to the bottom row. I'm going to sew these together like this in order. And so I'm just going to set these other rows over here. And I think I'd like to pin these. All right, I ended up ripping out I had sewn about half the seam. When I have my sashing on the bottom, my feed dogs pull it so much faster through that things just aren't matching up. So anyway, I'm going to try to make sure that I have the block on the bottom. Okay. Bueno. I'm just going to hang this back up on the wall as I do them. All right. Row 2. See, I've got a pin up here, so that tells me that the sashing is short of where it's supposed to be, so I'm going to make sure that I compensate for that. All right. That's it for putting together the rows, and so now we need to sew together the columns. So I'm just going to be pulling these off the design wall. All right. It's the only point I had to avoid on this row, which is delightful. Okay, so we've got the inside of our quilt sewn together. Now we'll work on the borders. It's a different day, so different outfit. And we're ready now to put the borders on. This turned out so cute, really happy with it. And if you've already downloaded the instructions for the quilt layout for the baby quilt, you may want to grab it again. I've changed the instructions to be more in line with what I'm going to show you here rather than pre-cutting your border strips. All right, so we're going to measure the bottom, the middle, and the top, and we're going to average those. 26.5 minus a 16th, because it's just easier for me to do it that way rather than figuring out how many 16ths. 26 and 3/8. 26 and 3/8. So that's a difference of a 16th. Not bad. And then the top, so 26 and 3/8. All right, so this basically, I think, is going to come down to 26 and 3/8, since two of the measurements of that and the other one's only off by a 16th. That's what I'm going with. Yeah, and we'll wait to measure the height until we get these short borders on. Okay, so I've already got some 2-inch strips with the fabric cut for them, which is plenty to do all the borders on this quilt. So I need to cut 2 of them at 26 and 3/8. I cut the selvages off, and so now I'm just going to cut both strips at the same time. All right. All right, and again, making sure that I'm sewing with my blocks on the bottom. All right. All right. That's great. Go ahead and stitch the other side. Take this to the iron. All right, to the iron. So I'm going to sew these borders on in the same order I did the first ones. All right, one last trim and press. Okay, while the quilt is finishing up on the long arm, I am going to miter together my binding strips. I cut mine at 2¼ inches, and I cut 4 with the fabric. I think that's going to be enough, but in case it isn't, I have this smaller piece I can miter onto the end when I get there. And so I'm using the same fabric as on my border and my backing. I just felt like I didn't need yet another distraction to take away from all the sampler blocks. So I line mine up like this, and then I stitch from the intersection here to the intersection here. And I just kind of eyeball it and make sure it looks pretty perpendicular. And I have some tape on my machine here that shows me where the needle is lined up to down here, so I don't have to draw lines. And then I just keep going. All right. All right, I need to go start the final row on the quilt. Get set up for the last row. So my binding strips, I just press them in half. Pretty simple. And then when I get to a miter, I will press them open. And I might actually press the miters first, just so I don't have to stop. Okay, so now I'm just going to press them in half. Okay, binding's ready. All right, so I measured all the way around this border, and I do have 4 inches. My goal is to trim this to so that the border is 4 inches all the way around to get it square. Then, yeah, that'll work. So I have this big 16.5-inch ruler, which is really nice for getting these corners nice and square. This ruler too. Okay. Okay. All right, let's see what we got here. $36 5/8. 36 5/8. 36 1/2. I'm absolutely fine with that. No trimming needed. 44 5/8. 44 5/8. And 44 1/16 shy of 5/8. So it's a wrap. All right, I'll have to clean that up later. Time to bind. I hope this is going to be a good angle to see what's going on. It's hard when binding because there's always all this quilt bunched up all over the place. It's hard to see what's going on by the needle. So, all right. I'm just going to check really quick and see if I'm missing the corners with the miters, and that one would have hit the corner. So, oh my gosh, the second one fell out the corner too. Yeah, it did. It's okay if they fall at the corner, but it's easier if they don't. It just makes it kind of bulky. Okay. So I sew my binding to the back first, and then I pull it around to the front and top stitch it very close to the edge. And so starting on the back, I'm going to get my walking foot on here. I'm going to pin this in place or clip it. Where's my clips? Clipping this in place. That'd be a good place to start so I don't hit a corner with a miter. A lot of people, or at least a lot of YouTubers I watch, will do this without using a walking foot, but I don't know. Dude, I need every advantage I can get. I'm not that good yet. Let's just say that. So, walking foot feeds the fabric through under the needle at the same rate as the feed dogs below. And to me, the most important thing when sewing on binding is to do a little test run to make sure you've got the seam allowance figured out right, so that when you pull it around to the front, you want to make sure that the front binding's covering up the stitches from the back side. So I like to just set my stitch length big and just baste it on first and then pull it around and see where I'm at. So I'm just going to take the easy way out to begin with, and I'm just going to use the edge of my walking foot, because wouldn't it be nice if I could just use that as my guide. And the thing is, quilt tops are different thicknesses, so this isn't necessarily going to be the same as it was on the last quilt I did. The last quilt I did had some pretty lofty batting, and this is not. So yeah, so it'll probably be different on this one. Okay, so folding it around to the front, if I line up, that's awesome. Yeah, okay. So turning my stitch length to a 2, it's just what I use. You know, most importantly, we want to make sure for when we come around the other side to the end that we have a nice gap here that's probably even wider than that, you know, 8 inches. And you want to make sure also you have a big tail, which I do. So yeah, so I just want to make sure when I come around this corner, when I stop, I have a good amount of space to work with when I join the two ends there. Okay. Well, got everything dialed in. Some people will use the clips and go ahead and clip this. You can do that. So what you want to do here, or what I do, I should say, is you want to stop stitching a 1/4 inch away from the edge. So, I mean, I could kind of mark that with this. I'll take a back stitch there, and then I like to turn it 45 degrees and run straight off the edge. All right. Double check. It's not too late to fix something. And what I do after I get the back all done is I'll take it to the iron. I think this is going to work all right. I take it to the iron and I press this open really good so that I know when I pull it around to the front, I'm not leaving fabric behind in the... Okay, so then I'm going to fold this at a 45-degree angle and then bring it back around on top of itself, heading perpendicular down the next side. And I just fold it right at the edge up there, and I like to even squish it a couple threads further than that, just for good measure. All right, start at the end, back stitch, finding the 1/4 inch and okay. I'm going to go ahead and call that good. That's a good amount of space. Probably I don't want much less than that. So I think I'm going to take this to the light table and show you guys how I connect these two. So I'll see you over there. So this is the best angle for me to do this from. And the reason is because it reminds me of when I was doing the miters on the binding. First of all, we need to cut these to length. So you want these to overlap roughly in the center of this space. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut this one first. And then the other one needs to overlap whatever width the binding is. So I cut this end off when I open it up. That's how wide the binding is. And that is how much we want to overlap these two pieces by. So, and then, one caveat, we want to cut it just shy of that. So I'm going to just come in like a 1/16 of an inch or so. Okay, so that's all the longer we need these. And then, this is where it gets crazy. So I'm going to start by folding this up together and clipping it to get all that bulk out of the way that's in between these two, so I can kind of isolate them. Pretending like I'm mitering the binding to begin with, I'm going to open that one up that way, and then I'm going to twist this one this way. And I always have to kind of test this. Yep, once that's folded back out, it will be the right direction. So I twisted it under and up, and I I get confused every time. Sometimes I sew it on the wrong way and I have to redo it. Okay. Okay. And so we're going to sew it diagonally like that, corner to corner. Okay. Okay. Sew together this miter, and it is easier to sew it together with a regular foot instead of a walking foot, but I'm lazy, so. All right. I know there's a lot in the way here, but basically I'm just making sure nothing's getting pulled out of whack. And I'm heading right for the other corner. And then we always test it out before we cut anything. Okay. That's great, and it will lie flat. So now I can just cut the excess. Get my dull scissors for this job. Okay. And I'm just going to finger press this open so I don't have to go to the iron. Okay. Good enough. Now we just sew that opening shut. Made sure to line that up. Okay, so now we go to the front where we bring the binding around. All right, so onto the front, and I'm just going to take my time and just try to put that stitch right along the edge there. And so, see, here's my stitch line. So it's super close to the edge of that binding there. And then on the back, it does show up on the back, but depending on your, fabric that you're using on the back, you can change the bobbin thread to something less noticeable. But yeah, this doesn't bother me. I know a lot of people do their binding differently. They machine bind the front first and then they hand sew the back on. But I'm just not very fond of hand sewing. I mean, that could change someday, but as of now, I prefer to put up with that stitch line on the back. So I'm watching to make sure that my binding is covering up the stitching that is there from when I sewed the binding on the back. So as I head towards the corner, I'm going to want to push that out to a 90-degree or to a 45-degree angle there at the end. And I want to fold that in so that the two edges meet right here. And I'll back stitch, and I'll just come onto the binding by one stitch. And then just continue along. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the cutting table and I'm going to go over the quilting thread and snip all those loose ends off. It's a nice big baby blanket, or I think I'm going to use mine as a wall hanging, so I need to learn how to put a sleeve on it, and I'll do that and hang it up in here somewhere. And then as soon as someone has a baby, I'll wash it and send it to them. And Yeah, I really wanted to wash it and show you guys before and after because I like doing that. But I might not wash it. I might hang it. So that's the baby quilt. The quilt for the 9-inch blocks that is a throw size. The description below has a link to the finishing PDF, and it has cornerstone, sashing, thin border and thick border, instructions for cutting, fabric requirements, instructions for the cornerstones are in there as well. And basically, you can watch the baby quilt video and follow those steps, and that will work perfectly for the throw size because it's the same, it's just bigger. For those of you making the 3-inch blocks who intend to make a throw pillow with it, there is a PDF for that in the description below as well. And I just proposed a layout that would end up at 18 inches for you. You could also do a 16-inch pillow, but that would be cutting it pretty close. And also in that PDF is a link to a video with instructions to make a sleeved throw pillow cover. And so I really appreciate all of you guys that just tune in and watch every time. And I am needing to take 4 to 6 weeks off in the upcoming future for personal stuff I need to deal with. So thank you for watching this video, and take care, and I'll see you next time.